Hi, David here, and welcome back to the channel, where we're looking at the teaching of divine love as revealed in the automatic writings of the early 20th century medium James Padgett. In last Sunday's video, we looked at a message from the Apostle John on the importance of prayer as part of our soul development. Today, we're going to take a look at a message to James Padgett from Jesus, given on October 10, 1915. So just 5 days after the message from John that we looked at in the last video. In this message, Jesus explains the importance of developing a faith that is not based upon mere belief, but is instead based upon the real experience of sharing in divine love. Which means at the soul level, the experience of knowing oneself to be a soul remade of divine love, the substance of God. By this stage, James Padgett has been writing detailed, coherent messages for about a year. During that year, James has been trying to put into practice what Jesus and the others are teaching him, which is to pray for the inflowing of divine love into his soul. Occasionally, we see that at a conscious level, he is sometimes still not sure whether this process is actually happening, as some of the messages he receives are written to reassure him. The message we're looking at today is one of these, but it's also a message that tries to explain to James why the conscious mind might not be aware of this process, which operates at the soul level. A life spent neglecting the soul in favour of the intellect leads to a mind that has never had to try and grasp what that soul might intuit, because that soul has been starved and is only barely alive, let alone functioning as it should. Faith, in the sense Jesus means it in today's message, is something such a soul is not yet capable of. All of this is what Jesus tries to explain to James in this message, which makes it a valuable one for anyone who has tried to pray for divine love, but is not yet far enough along in the process to be conscious of anything happening. So let's take a look at what Jesus has to say. The message begins, "I am here, Jesus. I came tonight to tell you that you are nearer the kingdom than you have been for a long time, and that if you pray to God in more earnestness, you will soon realize the inflowing of divine love that will make you free indeed, and fit you to enjoy that close communion with God that will enable you to forget all your worries and disappointments and see with your soul perceptions the great truths which I and my followers may endeavour to teach you. I know that at times it seems difficult to grasp the full meaning of faith in God and his love, but if you will earnestly seek, you will find that there will come to you such a belief in his wonderful love and in the nearness of his presence that you will be free from all doubt. So although Jesus uses the word belief in that last sentence, he isn't just talking about mental or intellectual belief. We all know that believing something doesn't make it true or real, and that human beings are perfectly capable of believing things that are manifestly untrue or unreal. So what is Jesus talking about? I think the best way of putting it is to say that Jesus is talking about the kind of knowing that comes from experience. Praying, or asking, to put it more simply, for God's love brings a response, which is the sharing of that love. The more earnestly and intensely we ask for God's love, the stronger the response. This is something that happens at the soul level. It is not some form of mental communication. It is a sharing of oneself, of the divine substance, divine soul to human soul. It happens gently at first, a process that occurs almost imperceptibly to a soul who has never before been woken. It takes time for the conscious mind to become aware of a process it has never before experienced, and therefore has never had to be cognizant of. This is why James Padgett puts to Jesus the question, what is faith? Jesus replies, you have asked me, what is faith? And I will answer. Faith is that which, when possessed in its real and true meaning, makes the aspirations and longings of the soul a real living existence, and one so certain and palpable that no doubt will arise as to its reality. Faith is not the belief that arises from the mere operation of the mind, but that which comes from the opening of the perceptions of the soul, and which enables its possessor to see God in all his beauty and love. So we might say that a soul who shares in divine love is truly alive and knows itself to be truly alive, existing in that love. And the belief that comes from that is our comprehension, or the conscious sense we make of that soul awareness. When we become aware of our own sharing in divine love, the substance of God, we become aware of God. We cannot be aware of God without it. When we become aware of our sharing in divine love, we trust in its reality, in the reality of God, not because we are willing to take a proverbial leap of faith, but because we know, and because no leap is needed. When we share in divine love, there is no gap between knowing and faith over which to leap. Knowing at the soul level is what gives us our understanding. Faith is understanding what we know, and that is a world away from mere mental belief. So seeing God isn't about observing a visual impression. It is about seeing in the sense of perceiving. As Jesus goes on to say, I do not mean that the possessor of this faith will actually see God in form or feature, but his soul perceptions will be in such condition that all the attributes of God will appear so plainly to him that they will be as real as anything that he can see with his physical eyes. Such faith comes only with constant and earnest prayer and the reception into the soul of divine love. No man can be said to have faith who does not have this divine love. Of course, faith is a progressive quality and increases as possession of this divine love increases, and is not dependent on anything else. Your prayers call from God, a response that brings with it faith. And with this faith comes a knowledge of the existence of this love in your own soul. Many persons, I know, understand this faith to be a mere belief and as existing in its true sense only in the soul. Belief may arise from a conviction of the mind, but faith never can. Its place of being is in the soul, and no one can possess it unless his soul is awakened by the inflowing of this divine love. What Jesus describes as faith is the sense and the ability to trust in God that we are eventually able to achieve as a result of an experience that we undergo at the soul level. That experience is itself not an event, but a process that begins so gently as to be almost imperceptible, and which, because it is a process, builds over time as our capacity and eagerness for further growth builds in response over time. It takes further time for the conscious mind to catch up, so as to make sense of a way of being that we have not previously known, and which may never have been explained to us. So we see from Jesus' words that what he means by faith is intimately bound up with knowledge of a real force in the universe, the experience of sharing in divine love. Faith, in this sense, is not about mental belief. It's not just some metaphor. It's not even something ensouled beings can achieve on our own. Faith, in the sense that Jesus explains it, is, dare I say it, a scientific, factual description of the outcome of a real, actual, specific process, that of sharing in divine love. Choosing to share in divine love is the only way to achieve this outcome. There is no other way. Like any other form of experience, either you undergo it or you do not. Jesus emphasizes this in his message to James Padgett, saying, when we pray to God to increase our faith, it is a prayer for the increase of divine love. Faith is based on the possession of this love, and without it there can be no faith, because it is impossible for the soul to exercise its function when love is absent from it. Without divine love, we are less than we are capable of being. Jesus knows that much of this message is difficult for James Padgett to get his head around, as it might be for anyone reading it and hearing this explanation for the first time. Jesus acknowledges this, saying, sometime as you progress in these writings, you will be in soul condition to understand just what faith is. But until that time, your faith will be limited by your possession of this love. The process of coming to share in divine love is, in this sense, like any other process. You can only know it to the extent that you have undergone it. Our ability to speak a language is limited by how well we have learned it. In this respect, the language of divine love is no different. At this point, James Padgett appears to ask of Jesus whether faith, in the sense just described, was an essential element in the healings that Jesus performed. Jesus replies, well, in my healing of the sick and the blind and the others of the earth who needed a cure, when I said, as your faith, so be it unto you, I meant that they must believe that God had the power to bring about the cure. I did not mean that if their minds merely had the belief that I might cure them, then they would be cured. For belief was not sufficient of itself, but faith was required. That's an interesting paragraph because there are many spiritual healers healing patients with perceptible benefit, even though neither healer nor patient may ever have heard of the possibility of sharing in divine love. I've met many such spiritualists and other spirit healers and seen them do good work. So why does Jesus speak of the need for faith in the sense that he uses the word, meaning knowledge born of the experience of sharing in divine love? There's a number of things we can see here. First, there is a difference between curing and healing. What I mean by that is that it is possible to improve someone's well-being without achieving a cure. Many healers are capable of this, and their efforts are still well worthwhile. Where healer and patient both share in divine love to a sufficient degree, the door can be opened to a cure, meaning a complete release from the condition that afflicts them. And I think it is significant that Jesus speaks of a cure when describing his own healing work in this response to James Padgett. Secondly, there is another message from Jesus to James Padgett on this topic, where Jesus explains that where healer and patient share in divine love to a sufficient degree, it can open the door to a healing being instantly effective. A third point that is worth making, and which has been made in at least one message covered in a previous video, is that God hears prayers even when they are not consciously articulated. He hears the language of the soul. Even though the conscious mind may not be aware of the knowledge of divine love, it is something we can be aware of at the soul level, in a sense asking for it without consciously knowing that we do so. So there are people in this world who share in divine love without having reached the point where they might consciously be aware of or be able to articulate that sharing. This means, in turn, that there will likely be healers and patients who are working in divine love without necessarily using this as a name for the energy they are working with. Nevertheless, the results will come. The names we use for things are less important than the reality of them. In talking to God, we are not confined to the earthly languages that shape our mental thoughts. Jesus concludes this message to James Padgett by reiterating this. Faith is not a thing that can be obtained by the mere exercise of the mind, but has to be sought for with the soul perceptions. I am with you in all my love and power, for I love you as I have told you, and desire that you shall become free and happy, so that you can do my work. With all my love and blessings, I will say good night. Your brother and friend, Jesus. The next video in this sequence, which will be uploaded next Sunday, will look at a message from Luke, in which he explains the dematerialization of Jesus' earthly body, which is the reason why the tomb in which it was placed was found empty. It's a challenging message, to say the least, but an important one, which takes us into some of the more unusual phenomena that in European and American culture have been associated with mediumship that is able to bring about physical manifestations. The next midweek video, 216, will look at the third and final message to James Padgett from John Carlyle, who was a prominent US politician into the 1890s and who found himself in a difficult condition when he passed to spirit. By the time of this third message, about 18 months have passed since the second message was given, so we get to see the progress Carlyle has made over that period. So do join me for one or both of those videos. In the meantime, as always, if you've enjoyed this one, please do take a moment to like and subscribe if you haven't already. It all helps to share knowledge of this material. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon. Take care until then. Bye-bye.